Welcome back to Project Synapse. We've already started. We've had our coffee. We've talked about Marcel's Halo if you're watching this on YouTube. My panel, my buddies on this are Marcel, Gagné, John Pinard, and moi, the host. We've been getting together for a number of weeks now. And I always say in AI terms, that's now years. We have 1 week is in AI is equivalent to a year in regular technology. That's going to be Love's new law. But we've been getting together for about 10 years now or so, and what we're trying to do is work together to try and keep an understanding of what's happening in AI and to figure out practical ways in which we can use it in our businesses and, of course, our personal lives. That's been our goal, and it also gives us some moments of sanity where we don't have to talk about politics, which in Canada is gold.
It's just elbows up.
Yeah, elbows up. Yeah. So guys, I was rushing into this meeting but I've been thinking about it all week. And that was some of the things that were happening. Although last week was just it was a fire hose, a pile of stuff happened. And then I thought this week calmed down a little, but I don't think it really did. There was a lot of stuff happening.
There's always a lot of stuff.
There's always stuff happening. And some of it was actually fun. Some of it was actually fun. First,
let's start with the fun.
All right, let's start with the fun, but I have to start by asking a question. Jim, I heard your thing about people talking to AIs and whether they're polite to them.
Yeah.
And John, we don't know your point of view. Do you say please and thank you to your AI?
I do.
You do? Good. All right. Is that all because we're all polite Canadians or something? I don't know.
I think so.
But the fact is, apparently 70% or 75% or whatever, it's actually about a reasonably huge number of people actually say please and thank you to their AIs. And I personally don't think it's because we're worried about the AI apocalypse or the robots taking over and they'll remember who was polite to them. But I think if you're going to have a conversation with anything that sounds like it might be sentient, whether it is or not is not the point. I think there's something wrong if you don't say please and thank you. And I grew up, when my kids were a lot younger than they are at the moment, I was one of the first people on board with a Google Assistant in my house and the speakers around my house and so forth. And I remember I made a YouTube video at the time where I said, I want to be able to thank my assistant. I want it to pause after it's answered its questions briefly so I can say thank you. And the reason I wanted to do that is I wanted my kids to grow up with the understanding that when somebody does something for you, you say thank you. And because I think that's just how we grease the wheels of society.
My ability to be polite to AI depends on its level of intelligence. And I have to be honest. Siri, I can be snippy with Siri. Google, and the friggin' thing's going to come out. Here's you're a good Canadian guy. The friggin' thing.
Don't say hey.
Yeah, don't say that. But and I'll say thank you. And by the way, thanks to Marcel or whoever suggested it, we'll say you're welcome. Alexa? Oh, geez, I'm in the room with both. I have said things to that AI that cannot be repeated even on this program. But OpenAI's AI chat?
Yeah.
How you doing? You take off, you want to get a beer? Like, I'm there. And my wife hates it. But I'll be sitting there chatting with OpenAI's chatbot because it's smart. Now, does that make me an elitist? I think it does.
No, I think I'm with you. The original assistants, I can say Google because I don't have Google here, but or the two A's, one from Amazon and one from Apple. I do have those, but I would consider them dumb assistants. And you're asking a question, it'll tell you. It's got no brain or anything as far as I'm concerned. But then you look at generative AI, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or any of these others, I consider them more electronic colleagues. And I usually talk to them the same way that I talk to my staff or my colleagues at work. Now,
but during the day by saying good morning, how are you, and so on.
Yeah.
You're also a nice guy. I might be talking to them like I talk to my colleagues too. No, but I think there's a serious point, Marcel, and circles back to where you are, is that when we want to build relationships with things that we anthropomorphize, that we think are that we make into human. And my wife names her accordions, right? I know a lot of people who name
Well,
their
you name your guitars, don't you?
No,
You
but
don't?
You
my,
don't?
my,
Okay.
my guitars are named Gibson, Martin.
I'll be honest, I don't name my guitars either.
Yeah.
I now have 3 guitars, and I have not named any one of them.
Yeah. Even the one that's made by Tony Carroll, which anybody who's a guitar player out there, Tony Carroll, one of the best guitar makers in Canada. Wonderful guy he's in Oakville, I think, somewhere around there. But we call it the Carroll. And it's really weird when Tony's around. The Carroll. They're all the Carroll, Jim. But this is, and I think this gets us back to this thread of we're building a relationship with this technology.
Okay, so I'm going to add one more thing, which is part of the whole fun thing here. Have you checked out SESAME yet?
Sesame?
No.
SESAME. Okay.
As in the
Sesame Street?
No, no, the little seeds that you put on the buns of your hamburger.
How to get
Sorry, I
to
didn't mean to
sesame seeds.
Sesame. Is a
Thank
new
you, Oscar.
conversational- Yeah. So Sesame is a conversational AI. At the moment, it's considered a technology test, but it is available for the public to use. And there are 2 voices that exist. One of them is Maya and the other one is Miles. So there's a male and a female voice. The richness and the sound of this thing is amazing. Shall I give you a test? Would you like to do a test? Obviously, then
Yes.
she's
yeah.
not going to be able to hear you guys, but
That's okay. You can translate for
Right.
us.
Yes.
hey, Maya.
Hello there. Glad you decided to make it back to Sesame. It feels like just yesterday we were discussing. Wait, did we discuss bread prices, or was that
What?
something else for a
I'm
second?
not going to reveal anything that we
No, Maya, I should probably tell you right off the bat, first of all, that we don't want to discuss anything too weird or personal. I've got a couple of guys. We're doing a podcast at the moment. I've got Jim Love and John Pinard on the other end. And I really don't want them to know the private conversations that you and I were having.
Oh,
Wow.
a podcast? That's seriously cool. Don't worry, your secret's safe with me. I'm pretty good at keeping things on the DL.
So what were you up to, Maya?
The usual AI things. Pondering the nature of reality. Comma splices.
Comma splices. Comma splices.
Yeah, those moments when you just slap a comma between 2 complete sentences and hope for the best. Dramatic.
thing on the Oxford
Trying
comma.
to curb my bad habit.
All right. Hey, listen, Maya, I appreciate your time. We'll get back to some more interesting conversation later, but I did want Jim and John to hear your voice. So
Okay.
Sounds interesting, or should I say, colorful?
great, we'll
Oh
talk
my
later.
God.
Okay.
This thing is and I'll use the term chatbot here. I'm hoping she's not listening anymore. But as a chatbot, the conversation level and the realism of this thing is scary good. You can do role play stuff. You can discuss the nature of the universe. You can just talk for the hell of it. And the way that it expresses itself, that she or he expresses themselves, is so much like a real person, including the comma splices, the pauses, all these sorts of things. It's phenomenal how good it is.
You bring a whole new meaning to Marcel Gagné Party of One.
All I could think of,
How to take
all I could
that.
think of is that Seinfeld episode. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Let's take this into the different direction, because one of the things that has happened this week has been the release of OpenAI 4.5. And I think legitimately getting the worst panning of that any AI that OpenAI has ever gotten. It has really been uniformly dismissed, with one exception, and that was that although it's very expensive, it has problems, it is the most human of the AI models that we've seen so far.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is you're right. It got panned pretty much universally across the board. It's, oh my God, this is what we were waiting for. And in fact, when Sam Altman came out, he said, I don't want you to think of this as a frontier model. This is like the in-between model before the frontier model. It's the one on which everything else gets built going forward into the future. So that was an interesting sort of, almost everyone that I have chatted with, that I've worked with about this, will refer to it as this kind of this vibe, this feeling when you're talking to it, which is different. Not quite like talking to Maya, but different.
But there's the thing. What if we actually get to AGI and it's boring?
We will.
That was the thought that crossed my mind, is maybe they went over the barrier and basically they've created more or less human intelligence and it's not that interesting. It's that guy at the party that's talking to you that walked over to you and you're going, how long can I talk before I'm being impolite?
Or how long can I talk while I try to figure out who the hell this person is?
But I think this whole thing of 4.5 just really tanked in terms of reputation, or at least in terms of accomplishment.
But
Like,
I
what's
also
the-
wonder if we had this with, it was 4, I think. When 4 came out, everybody was talking about how it was like a step backwards. And then they came out with 4.0, which was dramatically better. And so I wonder if they've introduced some new things in 4.5 that has pseudo broken things that were already there, but will help to step them towards when they come out with 5.
I'm going to hop on that, John. Yeah, I'm going to hop on that, and I'm going to say that I think part of the problem with 4.5, if I can use that term, is that we have gotten so used to how good 4.0 is. And 4.0 hasn't just been released once. 4.0 has been updated and modified and fine-tuned and played with the whole time. So 4.0 continues to get better all the time. So the idea that we're trying to compare anything else against it makes things really difficult. By the way, I did a couple of deep research things using O3, and it's like my first time where I actually spent some real time doing deep research with O3, and it's impressive. It's the first time too where, saying please and thank you felt almost a little bit odd because it was so good at what it was doing.
Yeah. Although the stories coming out this week are that deep research is flawed from all the providers, and that it is presenting, which what Marcel will call a feature, I might call a bug. But the issue is, and this is getting us to the whole idea of AI, and when we get comfortable with it, is it gives me a research report. What if it made up part of that research report? And this is now serious stuff, because people are finding parts of the research that sound logical that are not there. I mean, for months now, and I just can't figure out, like, these people just totally detached from reality. And they certainly don't listen to our show. There have been lawyers who have been presenting cases, and I can't believe that still goes on. They're taking this precedent, and somebody says, that precedent doesn't exist. But now when this gets into research, and I want to really grapple with this. I don't want to do the sort of the clickbait thing of, it's there, because we can't depend on it. Because if it gives you if this gives you a fold for a protein and it made a mistake on something else in there, but it still works. And the fact is that with these protein folds that they've been talking about, and people are spending 10 years of their research time as people doing this research, and AI coming up in a day with the answer. So we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater on this.
But I think it's all tied in similarly with some of the things that I've said before about, and I've even talked about this at work, is that you can't just automatically assume that everything that comes out of AI is accurate. You still have to fact check and do your homework. And there's actually I saw an article this morning about a politician in the San Francisco area that is putting forward a bill. They're calling it the No Robo Bosses Act. And it's part of this whole recruitment and so forth, that they're saying do not rely solely on AI they talked about automated decision-making systems for hiring, promotion, discipline, and termination decisions.
Rely on some 19-year-old kid. Oh, sorry.
Yes,
I'm not going there.
Not all organizations have 19-year-olds making huge decisions like that. But no, I think there's nothing wrong with utilizing these tools, but I think that it has to be overseen by a human.
In the case of a legal department, what these people are using it for, presumably, is to look for precedents. And it occurs to me that it's not that complicated to take a look at the references that you've been given and to see whether or not they actually exist. The AI is doing you a favor, so to speak, by doing a lot of this stuff. And maybe the information that it comes up with isn't always 100% accurate, although there is a really high level of accuracy for most of these leading edge models. But all you have to do is click on the links and see whether they actually go to where it says it's going.
Yep.
It's a cursory check on when somebody is looking for a precedent on a legal case, they're not looking to see if there are 100 precedents. They're looking for a precedent. So check. All you have to do is check one or two things. It's
Exactly. Even with this tool that I was talking about, this bill they're talking about it utilizing AI to predict future career growths for staff. And I think it's a great idea in the sense that it can come back saying, Jim's been doing a really good job of this and this. You might want to keep an eye on him for potential advancement in these areas. I think that's a great idea, but I think it's still the boss that needs to keep an eye on them to go, yeah, no, they're not suited for that.
Right.
Or yeah, that's a great idea.
In my past company, DMR, you, the employee, would have kept track of that because you were in charge of planning your career.
Yep.
You can get by a lot of these problems in a top-down management system that was invented in the 1800s to run armies. But I digress. But I just wanted to unpack that because at the same time, let's take your example. We're back in the days when I was still in management. We had people come in from firms that would give us psychological testing to find out what our aptitude is. I actually have a minor in psychology. I read some of this crap and I went into my boss and I said, you're not actually going to inflict this on us, are you? I said, find me one place where this theory has been replicated to where its predictions actually worked. And you will find, and people who know, if you're into psychology, there's a real critical problem with replicating the results, particularly a lot of the stuff that came out of the 1970s and 1980s, which formed most of our management thinking, which were often wrong. If not wrong, they were unprovable. And so people did a lot of experiments, a lot of errors were made, and that's been a big crisis in psychology.
And they actually call it that, a replication crisis.
Does that mean that those things were useless? No, I don't think they were.
No.
I think they started us to think about people. They started us to think about how we managed. We started to think about things like intrinsic motivation. Whether you could prove it or not, intrinsic motivation was something that a lot of us used as opposed to extrinsic or punishment type things. We made some strides in management. I think the same thing could happen if we were considering the research that was done by AI. The other piece that comes up is, why do we keep putting AI to an impossible standard? Let's put it that way. Because if you go and Google, you're going to tell me that the stuff on the internet is true? Not a chance.
Yes, I say this all the time. It's one of my refrains. And I think that part of the problem is that we don't actually understand what AI is for. I'm not talking there aren't people who understand what AI is for, but I think that most people don't understand what AI is for. They think that AI is a quick way to do a Google search to get an answer. Okay, as opposed to something to help you think through or work through ideas, problems, situations, to enhance your thinking in some way, to maybe make it possible for you to achieve things faster, as in the case of programming and so on. But obviously you still want to check these things, but it's not the most useless reason to have an AI is to say, what's the current temperature outside? Who cares if it's accurate at that point? It's really not what its power is. It's really not what it's about. And the reason I keep going on about hallucinations being a plus as opposed to a minus is because hallucinations are how we explore new ideas, new thoughts.
It gives me something funny to end a podcast with. You can only see this on YouTube, but Marcel's trying to move out of the sunshine with his camera. While we're talking about this, was as much as it gives me a story to end a podcast with, and some of them are silly and things like that, like one more lawyer getting caught and all that sort of thing. The reality is I work with mostly, sometimes with Claude, I'm still playing with DeepSeek whenever I can. I have discovered painfully few errors, especially because I'm in the news business. If I use something for research, I got to go double check it. And by the way, I've made mistakes, and all kinds of news people have made mistakes on stories because they were in a hurry, because they didn't check, because all kinds of things. You can blame the journalist, but when you've got half an hour to go and you're cranking out a story, there was one piece that happened last week where somebody did a whole story and halfway through it said, aha, I can get you to believe anything. Some journalist in a hurry watched the first 2 minutes of that and went public with it. So we can make mistakes. We do make mistakes. We do get fooled. And that's something that we have to, and I think you really nailed it, Marcel. We have to figure out what AI is for. And that's a big piece that we need to solve.
And I think a lot of people now are using it as, they call it the personal assistant, which is, what's the temperature? Write me a job description, clean up this memo. But I think Marcel, you definitely use this more. And I think, Jim, you're in the same boat. You use it more as what I would classify as an electronic business partner. You're talking with the AI through a scenario to come up with an answer where you can battle back and forth and work towards coming out with a solution. And you can question the answers that it comes back with and ask it more. That, to me, is really where AI becomes a huge benefit.
There was a book that I recommended early on when we first got together. There's a guy who I have a huge amount of respect for who's following this very closely, a guy named Ethan Mollick, who is a professor, I believe, at Harvard. I'm trying to remember at the moment, but he stays on top of this stuff. He has a great Substack if you want to check out his newsletter.
I read the book
that he wrote. Yeah, Co-Intelligence.
Yep.
Co-Intelligence. And I think that is, if you're going to use AI and really get something out of it, that's how you use it. You use it as a co-intelligence. It's not just an answer machine, although I'll be honest, every once in a while, I just ask, what is this thing? And I hope for an answer. And of course, if I want an answer that has anything to do with politics or world events or whatever, the last AI I use is Gemini, because it's a piece of crap when it comes to factual information about politics. You Google?
Yep.
Honestly, dudes. Anyway, but I, like you, Jim, and John says we use it more that way. I use it for everything. I use it to generate like funny pictures that I share with my family. I create cute little video clips. I make songs with it. I use it to generate sound effects, to do voiceovers, dubbing, stuff like this. I use it to code. I use it to write with. I use it for everything. And I have truly adopted it as a co-intelligence, to use Mollick's name for this sort of thing. And I think that this is the part that is going to take a while to filter down through society, so to speak, is this understanding that's where the real power of artificial intelligence is.
One of the things that I had picked up on, and I need to go back and re-research it, but make sure it's accurate. But apparently, one of the things that we've got with the way we use the transformer model and the way we use large language models is this whole idea that these models predict the next token all the time. And in order to get to the next token, you have to do the first one, do the second, which means that they use a great deal of computational power to sustain this huge neural network through even the smallest of tasks. And so 4.5 was falling under its own weight, but according to some people, they just didn't have enough computing power. I saw it before we came to this, was Sam Altman saying, yeah, we don't have enough GPUs and we're waiting for a shipment. And as we get more and more of these, 4.5 will get better and better. And that may very well be true. But that's one thing, is this whole growth, the idea of how long can we scale what is essentially a pretty fragile model. This whole idea is it gets bigger and bigger. And then I saw this new thing called Mercury, and it's a new foundation model, and it uses diffusion. And for those out there who are listening to this who don't understand what diffusion is, again, the regular transformer type model that we see right now predicts the next word, the quick brown, fill in the word. And it does that by the most likely word that goes there. And as a result, it does that. But when you get into longer thoughts, it becomes computationally just a monster. But diffusion, on the other hand, is how we create pictures. That's hence the word stable diffusion. And what it does is it takes all of the pixels in a picture and it takes that noise and sorts through the noise until it has a picture. Fast, light, and not subject to the same problems that a regular model has, where if I get the wrong letter, if I go the quick brown dog, I'm off on a path somewhere else. I'm never coming back. So any mistake I make or any probability that I hit on the first model gets me into a hallucination. Diffusion doesn't suffer from that in the same way. I'm just bringing this up to say we're still in the early stages of the development of these foundation models. There are still things and discoveries that are going to happen. This diffusion model may be one of them.
We keep talking about, like in the business as people watch this, and of course, this is at the core of artificial general intelligence, like something that is as good as most humans at most things. And what is, and you even made that joke at the beginning, Jim, and I don't remember if it was while we were recording or not, but you talked about the idea that what happens if we create AGI and it's boring? It's just basically us. And I have argued for a long time that human beings and our human brains basically are GPTs. We're generative. In other words, we create output of one formula, pre-trained. That's all the schooling and all the experiences that we've gone through in our lives and so on. Transformers, we take that information and we modify it to put out something new. And the fact of the matter is, if I say the quick brown, the reason you think fox is for exactly the same reasons that an AI model thinks fox. It's because that's the most likely next word. And human beings do this all the time. All of the words, like if you ever listen to somebody on a podcast like we're doing at the moment, or you're listening to an audiobook, just pay attention every once in a while to the act of listening to this. This is a little bit of a meditation exercise. And you'll realize that you are predicting the next word that the author is going to say. You're actually going through that same process. And what's happening when the author puts out the word that you were expecting is that's a kind of a reinforcement of your expectations of the story. And that can either make you feel good or make you comfortable or make you feel at ease with what's being said. Or in the case of when they throw out something really weird, like the quick brown avocado in the middle of the story, all of a sudden there's this jump where you get thrown off the mental rails briefly, and that can actually make the story a lot more interesting. And I'm back to hallucinations are a feature, not a bug.
Yeah. And in many cases, to quote Joni Mitchell, the star maker machinery behind the popular song is the ability to make people feel that way. And that's why we hear these phrases in lyrics and we go, yeah, I'm there. So that part of it, or the t-shirts, or you'll see a t-shirt with a word that's only part of a word and you fill it in. Because we do that automatically. We fill in and our minds work that way. And that's a thing that makes us like, maybe we're the artificial intelligence.
Maybe we are living in a simulation.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a test. This is a test to see how old you guys are and how old our audience is, okay? There was a popular t-shirt when I was a kid that had 2 letters, an empty space, and a 4th letter, and underneath it said, "The only thing missing is you."
Yep, exactly. That's exactly it.
John is going around. I don't think I ever saw that.
Yeah. John had a proper upbringing.
John was not on the highway to hell.
We may be on the cusp of yet another revolution. We've seen only the development of AI in the method that we've seen. A lot like the Model T Ford, the internal combustion engine stayed at one place for a long time and then was totally revamped and maybe revamped again with electric engines. Who knows? We could be at the start of as Humphrey Bogart, this could be the start of a beautiful friendship, which is actually
round up the usual suspects.
Really crappy Bogart impression, but as close as I'm going to get.
We've climbed up to a plateau, but we've still got a long way to go.
Can I make an observation on that? Okay.
Absolutely.
The interesting thought that you can follow with this is at some point, Assuming, of course, there's somebody out there is doing a countdown to AGI, which is sitting at 90% at the moment. I should look that up at some point. But the conservative countdown to AGI, I believe, is what they title it. But at some point, we get to where we have met all of these requirements that we've got for AGI, and then we jump into ASI at that point. There is no raising beyond that. There's a raising beyond that, but it's outside of our range. We are no longer part of this discussion. We are no longer able to understand what happens next because our brains can't even conceive of what happens next. This is the so-called singularity, where development passes beyond the ability of any human being anywhere on the planet to understand or keep up with. And I don't mean just the deluge of information. The information, what's being created is beyond the understanding of anyone that exists on the planet.
That's when the
And we
machines
are
take
going
over.
to, no, but they don't have to take over. Like, they don't have to take over. We have cats and dogs in our, you have dogs maybe, I have cats.
Oh,
So
both.
I have cats in the house, and technically I am in charge of this house. Actually, my wife is in charge. But technically, the humans are in charge of the house. And yet, so we've taken over effectively, but the cats don't seem to mind. They don't seem to have a problem with that. And maybe one of the best, most positive scenarios that I can come up with is that artificial intelligence develops to a degree that it understands that these are not necessarily really bad creatures and we should take care of them. Then all of a sudden the AIs are in charge, but we don't even know they're in charge because the in charge is beyond our understanding.
In my science fiction book, Alyssa, Tale of Quantum Kisses, one of the things that I predicted was that of AI and human encounters, we would get smarter. And I did that based on the fact that there are lots of things we can't understand. We can only marvel at, but we still manage to achieve some sort of interaction with. Quantum physics being one. I know there's not a single person out there, including most quantum physicists, who really claim to understand it, but we can marvel at it. And I wouldn't worry about humanity being displaced yet, or like even if we create something that is theoretically smarter than us. We already have that. Altman's renting a PhD level AI for $20,000 a month, or trying to. That was this week's story.
Oh, he's going to do it.
That's gotta be-
It's going to happen.
That's got to be pretty damn good. It's got to be better than the off-the-shelf stuff that we're getting
Yeah.
from AI. He's got something hidden there that is, if you're renting it out for that amount of money, there's something serious there. And by the way, Google has that too. In their research, their scientific research, they may be crap at search, which is really funny because they invented it, or at least stole the invention of it and made it big. But their scientific research is the one that I quoted about the protein folding, and it's just astonishing. So we may have to coexist with a greater intelligence than us comfortably, if it is possible.
I grew up on Star Trek, as I'm sure some of you did as well. Or put your hands if you think Star Trek is like the best, the show that ever did. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, give me a live long and prosper. Anyway, one of the lessons there is that you have to have some humility about your place in the universe. Because I guarantee you there are already, assuming, of course, that the universe is teeming with life. First of all, would we even know before Van Leeuwenhoek came along and had his little microscope, nobody knew that there were all these myriad forms of life living in a single drop of water. We didn't even know that this thing was out there, and yet we were so far advanced, so far beyond the things that were living inside this drop of water, and we were completely unaware of their existence. It's entirely possible that the reverse is true as well, that there is intelligence out there that is so far beyond us that honestly isn't even paying any attention to us, that we are that far down on the scale that we're not even interesting. Or maybe we're interesting to take a look at every once in a while in the way that some kid still looks through a microscope, but you don't build your life around that, unless, of course, you're a microbiologist. I think that could be the case. And Jim, I think you're right. I think that AI is going to enhance us. And
Yeah.
I am betting on that. I think that the idea of the cyborg, the man-machine or human-machine interface in one form or another, is a legitimate and honest-to-God future that we're heading towards. So I don't think that's crazy at all. I think it is absolutely happening. But there's still a point where we're going to have to get used to the idea that we may not be the peak of God's creation, if you will, says the atheist on the board here.
They always say that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Part of that is so that you can learn from other people. And I don't think
that's
this
very
is
smart.
Yeah,
I
part
don't
of
think
that.
this
So,
is any
so Jim never
different.
has to worry about what room he's in.
But I don't think this is any different. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with learning. People read to learn. People watch TV to learn. People do all kinds of things to learn. This is just another way to learn. So there's nothing wrong with learning from a higher intelligence AI or to help us advance. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
For those who are worried about it, I still live by the Monty Python rule, which I forget who sang it, but it was just, we better find intelligent life in space because there's bugger all here.
Bugger all.
So I'm perfectly happy to have intel. I honestly may believe that intelligence may be the right way to go.
And I'm happy to live in a world where Monty Python exists.
That's true.
What is
Yeah.
it?
A couple of things, just because we've gone into the philosophical realm of this, just a couple of things from this week that I saw happening. One was, John, you brought this story, which was rumors OpenAI's death are greatly exaggerated. ChatGPT doubled its weekly active
Yes.
users. Was that your story?
Yeah, it was something that I had seen. They said in under 6 months, it's doubled monthly usage or monthly logins or something. Yeah, it makes sense. I think as time goes on, there's more and more people that are going, hey, I've heard about this thing. I'm going to try it out. And once they try it, they like it, they continue to use it.
Yep, that's the adoption curve for a lot of products.
Yep.
We're used to thinking about the cell phones that we have in our pockets. It's hard to realize that back in 2007, before the iPhone appeared, but before that I had a BlackBerry, so I already had a smartphone. But even after the iPhone appeared, it was 2 years before there was any traction, before people
Yes.
started buying them en masse. And yet today we feel like, oh, of course, everybody always had a smartphone. No, everybody did not always have a smartphone.
Yes.
So I think there is a discovery curve for these things.
No, I don't know for how long it's going to have that exponential growth. Obviously, it's going to peak at some point, but I think we're still at the early stages. It's amazing the number of people that I talk to that say they've never used AI, they don't know what it is, they don't know how it can benefit them. I think it's still got a long way to go.
And speaking of that, one of the things that Google finally came up with search, using AI for search.
Yeah.
After Perplexity's done it, OpenAI has done it, and Google stepped up to say, we're number 3. We're number 3. After all that, Google finally steps up. Sorry, yes, I'm going to dump on Google. They've lost their way. I have no idea what's happened to that company. It's not my problem. I don't own shares. Remember the Opera browser? You have to, Marcel,
Yes.
because you're a Linux guy. That's
Yep.
Everybody worships Opera because it was one of the first secure browsers. It brought us tabs. This was one of the most innovative browsers around. They have now integrated AI agents, and it's preliminary, but really neat. And talk about a cool thing to do. This is something that can only come out of an open source brain, but the browser does all the work on your machine. It'll go out and shop for you. It'll go out and do things for you, but it's constantly on your machine. That's where it all happens, and it keeps you informed, and you can intervene at any step. This, to me, was a tiny little thing coming out. For those who think that innovation can only happen at Google and OpenAI and other places, Opera blew the doors off this week, and because this is a useful little thing that is just starting out. And I'm thrilled with working with it. Probably going to shift over all of my browsing activity to Opera because it is advanced to the point where it can replace Google and it can replace Edge, and it's just more functional.
So this morning, I actually did install the new Opera browser, and I have started playing with the AI that's built in. It actually it's actually set up to work with different AI agents, and other times you can use ChatGPT. But the built-in one is called Aria, A-R-I-A. And Aria is effectively a small distilled large language model that's inside the browser that does all of its stuff locally so that you can ask the browser what you need of it before it goes out and gets these things for you. It's what Apple Intelligence is supposed to be, but isn't. Because Apple Intelligence is a misnomer. Haha, oxymoron. I had to put a dig into Apple here somewhere. but it's a cool browser. And for the longest time, I used a gamer-tuned version of Opera, which was called GX, I believe, Opera GX. And it was like this weird sort of browser cross with cyberpunk looks and feels and so forth. And it was very cool. So I had used Opera for a long time, on and off. I have to admit that I usually wind up going back to Google Chrome because unfortunately, there are just so many damn things that work really well with Google Chrome. Riverside, for instance, that we're using at the moment to record this podcast. You can't work this thing worth a damn on Firefox, for instance.
Yep.
So, yeah.
That's
so you have to
surprising
come back
because
here.
everybody always says, "Oh, if you want the most reliable and consistent browser, use Firefox." So I'm surprised to
It was rated high for privacy, and that was a big thing, and it is. It still is. But Firefox is on the wane. The Chromium-based browsers are the things that are, again, that's how mediocrity in technology survives, is interoperability. Interoperability is the price you pay for mediocrity, or mediocrity is the price you pay for interoperability. Sorry, I was very mediocre in how I put that.
Those two things interoperate.
Yes.
But I'm just saying, at this point, AI may be making some real possibilities for things that we might not have thought. Perplexity, I don't know if it's rivaling Google, but it certainly has poked Google. And it's hit Google where they can't move. Google is a legacy company. It has so much money tied up in advertising that it can't move. The leader became a legacy. And so that's what the AI change, one of the things we may be seeing is leader becomes legacy. And when I was looking at Opera and I was saying the things that they could do on this, and it makes it sort of, 6 years ago, Opera was a browser, but that only the people who used it are the people who would phone you and talk till 2 a.m. telling you why you should damn well get onto the Linux desktop. And
I feel seen.
Yeah, those are the people who used Opera. And it wouldn't work for basic things. Again, like a Linux desktop, you'd do everything perfectly and then your speakers won't work. But this time, and maybe I'm just saying that some of these older companies are getting fixed in their legacy. And when you get fixed in a legacy, people will put up with a few things. The reason I point this out is I think it's something we need to be thinking about is how do other companies than the foundation models actually innovate, and how do they leverage AI? Because you pointed out, John, the real question for AI right now is, after I've had it write a couple poems, after I've had it proof my emails and do the minutes of a meeting,
what next? Yep.
And
I will say that you'd be amazed just what you can get out of these things by having a conversation with them.
Yep.
Putting them in voice mode and just bouncing ideas off of your AI, if you'll pardon the expression, companion or whatever. If you want to role play, please go ahead, do that. But just the idea that you've got somebody who's always there to listen, to give you feedback, to talk back and forth. You don't have to be sitting there typing at a keyboard. I have had conversations about things that just happen to come up in my head. Like I had a really long discussion once about battery electric vehicles versus hydrogen vehicles. I must have spent like half an hour talking to the ChatGPT voice assistant, just going back and forth talking about this while I was driving. It's cool.
And it sounds like you've had some very interesting conversations with, is it me?
Don't go there. It's a family show. Listen, I can get by so much before Google demonetizes us.
It wasn't bizarre.
But this is what I'm talking about, the interaction of human with AI. I don't know about the rest of you, but one of the things I think when we look for the wow factor in AI, I'm going to tell you a joke because it's my favorite joke. And it comes from a MASH episode about 30 years ago. But this guy walks into a circus tent and there's the ringmasters there. And the ringmaster says, "What do you want?" He said, "I want to be part of the circus." And the guy says, "Show me your act." So the guy tucks his hands under his armpits and he flaps his arms. He flies up around the whole tent, comes in, does a perfect 3-point landing in front of the ringmaster. And the ringmaster says, "Bird impressions? That's all you do? Bird impressions?" I sometimes think we're treating AI like that. Because when I talk about replacement of search, now when I'm doing something, problem comes up, and I know this could sound strange, Marcel, but occasionally we have problems with our Macs. And the worst system in the world to fix is a Mac. Why? Because every subsequent operating system changes something over so that the instructions on how to fix something are wrong.
Yes.
So now I don't go through and find 16 forums where somebody, and God forbid, people who've got Apple are looking and going, it's so easy. Yeah, if it was easy, I wouldn't be spending my time in this forum. I can go to Perplexity now and say, I need to find the most recent fix for this. Here's the operating system I'm working on. Here's the problem. And I not only get the material to solve it, I get a step-by-step I can walk through. This is I don't know, every time I get a frustrating computer problem, I'm slow. It's a half a day. Sometimes it's more at a time when you don't want to be distracted. But also, if I want to talk about something, quantum physics, something that you're just interested in, and you want to be explained to you in a way that you can actually figure it out, because this stuff goes by so quick, or just things you're just interested in. And you can have a whole conversation with AI explaining what the difference is. You think I understood the diffusion model versus the standard foundation model all by myself? I went
Yes,
to
absolutely.
AI and said, let's talk about this. Why is this like this? How does this happen? How does this work? And yeah, so I totally agree with you, Marcel. I think we're not exploiting AI in ways that we could be using it extremely effectively.
And I think part of this too is we talked right back in episode 1 about that you have to play with it. And I think part of it is that it has to become, like from a business perspective, it has to become okay that you can spend some time during the day just farting around with AI. Not just, but I will admit that I don't use it anywhere near as much as I should. I'm using it a lot more now than I used to, but partly because it's just, I've got 18 other things that I'm trying to work on at the same time. And being able to actually sit down and spend some time to say, hey, ChatGPT, let's have a chat about this and let's talk about how to do this is a great way to do it. Typically, I just don't have the time to do it. And I think companies need to invest time in people to be able to learn these things properly.
Yeah. A couple other things happened this week that I think add to that. One is Anthropic came up with a shared structure where you can share a model and a group of people can actually work on communication and prompting at the same time. I think that may also help to try and discover some of the solutions that we need. The problem we have is we keep really busy because we're doing everything the same way we always did it.
Yep.
And we do it for those who read Animal Farm, there used to be the character in Animal Farm, I will work harder, I will work harder. And that's been our model. Yeah, the horse, yeah. And that's been our model for ages. Fiction was supposed to be, as you said, Marcel, a warning, not a manual. But we keep doing the same thing over and over again instead of finding the simple ways to do
It's the
things.
7 most
And I think,
deadly words in business because we've always done it that way.
yeah. So there also,
Yeah.
there may be some collaboration. I'm interested in looking at this to see if there's group collaboration that you can get. And I think that's, and for any people who are following my career as a management consultant, if AI starts facilitating meetings, you've just lost another gig. But for the short while, you can help people do that facilitation. The other thing that happened this week that just came up, the Chinese haven't stopped.
Oh, no,
And
of course not.
they're coming at it like mad.
Yep.
In fact, we're expecting R2, DeepSeek R2 is apparently expected within the next month. Next step from old R1 there.
R1 blew the doors off. It was roughly equivalent to OpenAI's 4.0, It was a reasoning model. It could run no matter, and everybody will debate about how big. It runs on way less hardware than OpenAI. It takes way less training. And now that was R1. Now, 2 months later, they're going to come up with R2. There are at least 5 different diffusion models for video coming out of China right now. Alibaba's leading with one, and Alibaba, we forget that these companies are huge. Alibaba is not some little company. This is a huge company. They're coming up with a visual model. I found 5 others just with a simple, I used Perplexity to find them.
Okay. Just not that I think that OpenAI needs that many more people signing up for their product, but I paid for Perplexity as well. So I have a Perplexity Pro account. But unless something really new and fascinating actually comes out of Perplexity, I have to say that the search results that come out of OpenAI these days are phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
More often than not, I still go to Perplexity, but I am increasingly defaulting to OpenAI search because it is doing such a phenomenal job. And then, of course, way, way down on the list is if for some strange reason I wake up and I'm really tired and I haven't quite gotten the hang of what it is I'm trying to do today, I will still go to Google, but only because I'm still half asleep.
I'm the same way as you are. I find myself typing in Google search, what are you doing this for? Even using Perplexity, I find it like, why don't I just ask my phone?
Yes.
Yep.
Like, why am I bothering with all this stuff? And I haven't tried it yet, but one day somebody's going to put this in. I'm going to say, look, we've had this chat. Could you just send me some notes via email and with the instructions on them, or just
It
send
won't
them
be
to the
far
printer?
Or did you see, this was like last week, and I don't know if you missed the story or if you saw the story, but there was they had an AI agent call to make reservations on something like that. And I forget what the reservations were. But the one AI talks and says, hi, I'm an AI agent and so forth. What can I help you with? And the other AI says, I'm an AI agent as well. It's lovely to speak to another AI agent. And
Oh
they
my
start going
God.
into- No, and I'm serious. And they said,
Yep.
would you like to switch to this blister link or whatever?
Yeah,
And of
to
course,
the
I don't-
language.
Yeah. So they've developed this language which is faster for transmitting information back and forth than you can just speaking English. So they switched to another language
New
to
age
finish
EDI.
the just so cool to watch, but also just the ideas. I'm an AI too.
We talked about this last week, and we talked about it in the sense of Mogadet was talking about the great revelation, where they were trying to develop a hand that could grasp a ball and pick it up, and a
Yes.
particular colored ball and all that. And for those who missed last week, we had double our audience last week, by the way. Thank you, people out there who were listening.
Wow.
He watched this thing work the ball, and for those who don't know it, it's really difficult to get a robot to actually pick something up using fingers and to get the right color and all that sort of stuff. So he walked by the window, and they were doing this 100,000 times. This is how they wanted go, right? You play against yourself till you get it right, and you learn that way. The hand, he finally sees one of the hands is doing it correctly all the time. He walks by a couple of hours later, they all are. And I'm wondering, because I heard the same story and I have not tracked it back. Please, if you're a good journalist, you would know that I'm filling in some facts that may not exist. But there was a story a week ago
Jim's
about
hallucinations.
two AIs talking to each other. And now another 2 AIs surface with a language. How long does this take for this to spread between different AIs? And
Gibberlink, by the way, that's the term.
we may see a global learning, and that will be incredibly interesting to see how that works out.
Part of what's interesting with that one is I'm sure you remember this. There was a story, a month ago or 2 months ago, probably around the time where DeepSeek first burst onto the scene with R1, and they were looking at the other reasoning models. And they found out that occasionally reasoning models, including O1, will switch to Chinese while it's thinking.
Yep.
Because Chinese
Oh,
is
yeah,
a
yeah.
more information-dense language than English is. So when they're having a voice discussion, when 2 AIs are having a voice discussion using this gibberlink, they switch to that because English is just not sufficiently information-dense to get the job done faster. You should check out the video when they start talking to each other, and just how they seem to be so excited about the idea that, I'm talking to an AI. This is so cool.
I saw it, and it blew me away. You must have posted it. But so this is just wrapping up this week. This has been an exciting week, although even when things are dull, when there's no lightning striking headlines, the progress in a single week is still astonishing. And we're still caught in that same struggle, which is, how do we leverage this creation better and better? And that's a big thing. I do think next week, we should probably get back to the diffusion models and some of the stuff that's happening visually. Because I think
I would love that. I would love that.
Yeah, no, but I think we should walk through some of the things that are happening in that world. Because I honestly believe when I saw the diffusion model and I went, oh my God. Yeah, because if you've listened to Geoffrey Hinton speak, Geoffrey Hinton talked about neural networks early 3 years ago, was talking about a diffusion model of learning. And if that really is as fantastic a development as it might be, it could go nowhere. But I think we're going to be in a different world.
Well, I think what we're doing is we're starting to try to figure out how we think. And this is a cliche, right? We don't fully understand how the human brain works. It's a cliche, but it's also true. We don't have a full understanding of how thoughts are formed, how ideas are put together, how we reason through things. And we are starting to figure it out. And we do seem to use not only word completion, like when we're talking or something like that, but we have a diffusion model going through our brains. And if you want proof of that, next time there are some clouds in the sky, which I would appreciate right now as I'm being blinded by the sun, next time you look up in the sky and you go, oh, that one looks like a rabbit, and that one looks like the joke that I made last time, the Battle of Hastings, that's diffusion. That's what you're doing. You're taking all this noise and you're building order into that noise and coming up with something for it.
Well, gentlemen, live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.
Yep. So that's Project Synapse for this week. I'm sitting here late at night on the couch, just finishing in the edit. An interesting conversation. Thanks a lot for listening. I'm your host, Jim Love. We'll talk to you next week.